right, everybody, welcome back for episode 5 of the Business Blueprint. I have one of my favorite realtors here this week, Sarah Madia. Sarah, tell us a little bit about, we're just going to jump right into it.
Okay.
The thing I think separates you from a lot of other agents, and correct me if I'm wrong, so there's always a stigma in real estate of like new construction and residential. You do a lot of both, right?
I do both.
What do you think's your percentage?
Oh, wow. You know what? I would say 2/3 are probably, real estate, but it could be a mix of renovations in existing houses. And I'd probably say like 1/3 is new construction, like ground up.
So do you find it hard for a branding aspect to not be known as a new construction person or not be known as strictly a residential person? Or do you find it difficult to juggle both?
No, I don't actually.
That's what's unique.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I wanted to dive into this. Because I think some people, when they get into new construction selling, they're worried that they're only going to be labeled as a new construction real estate agent.
Yeah.
Whereas you've done a really fantastic job over the years of doing both. And that's what like really kind of drew me my interest to you, is you play it better than most.
Thank you. Oh, no, I appreciate that. No, I would say, starting out, part of my background is I grew up around new construction. Right. So I definitely had more understanding and knowledge about it than maybe an average agent would, but I still had so much to learn, especially like with the work I'm doing in the city. Like that was a whole new world. Yes.
So when you say you grew up around new construction, what did that look like?
So I come from a family of just real estate. So my dad got his real estate license back in the day. He was a mortgage lender. I think back then you were allowed to do loans and sell. So he was doing both. And my mom had her license. And over time, my dad said, well, I think I could build these houses that he saw. So he started to build houses. He's probably built, I know, over 800 houses, if not 1,000 houses in his career. Wow. So starting with small houses to like Hampton, Fox Chapel, like North Hills, like we do Madia Homes is my dad and brother. They build like pretty high-end custom, but they build up to that. So I grew up as a kid around blueprints, and we haven't ever seen these like with what we do as realtors. Right. But back in the day, the MLS, like they had these big phone books. That's what you would search through to see listings. And I remember seeing those as a kid. That was just normal. But I have a background actually in graphic design. I went to art school and I worked in advertising prior to real estate. So I didn't jump right in, but I was familiar with new construction. So getting into real estate, that didn't scare me as much like a new house because I grew up on construction sites. But building a business, to answer your question, that you do a bit of both, I think part of it was because I was always working with friends and family, and not everyone was going to buy a new house. So I got my feet wet doing that. My brother, he's actually a broker. He had his real estate license right out of college. And so when I got mine, I partnered up with him. And so we were doing resales, just like most agents would do. But we had this other side because we were helping our family with selling their houses. So I was able to do a bit of both. And, part of it, as we all know, real estate's working your referrals, so friends and family. And so that's where a lot of that business, and by doing a really good job with that, we were able to build, because we used to be a team. Now my brother's building houses, but we used to just build up that part of the business, and then we sold for my dad. But what I do now is a little bit different because I'm not just working just with Madia Homes. Right. So
they're still actively building, correct?
Correct.
They're primarily in the North Hills?
Correct.
Okay. Do they do like single customs, or are they doing plans?
We do both.
Okay.
I say we, but it's my brother and dad, but it's Madia.
Yeah.
They build in communities, but if someone were to have a piece of land and they're like, hey, we've heard about Madia Homes, would you build for us? If it's in the North, they're always open to that conversation.
Yeah, I ran we don't do a ton in the North, but definitely have seen some of it. It's high end for sure. Yeah. Beautiful stuff, definitely. So whenever you started getting into the new construction, did that kind of attract you? Did you find it exciting? Did you get involved in more of the process?
Because with Madia or in general?
Just in general, when you first started understanding, like, okay, even when I want to get into real estate, did you get more involved in the construction side of it at first, just to understand more?
So here's what I could say. So back then, I've been doing this for a hot minute. Yeah. But in the early years, we would have clients that are like, hey, I want to buy a Ryan home, or I want to buy a Heartland home. home. And I was like, well, we can definitely advocate for you, because we knew the right questions to ask. And we knew like how to find them the best lot in the plan, or like whatever that unique thing was that they needed. So I think that set us apart with helping with buyers. But about 10 years ago is when I built my house in Lawrenceville that I live in, which I was an early adopter, pioneer moving into Lawrenceville.
Yes, you are.
Bought down there about 13 years ago, but I've been in my house over 10 years. And I think people were like, who's this crazy girl that's building a big house in Lawrenceville? Because that wasn't a thing yet.
No.
And it actually was a huge blessing, because people were like, what is that? What's happening? Like, why is this house being built? And I think it opens me up to some of the developers down there. They're like, oh, she's a realtor. And it actually opened some doors for me, to be completely honest. Now, I had to walk through those doors and I had to follow up. And a lot of times, being a girl that's like not being, anything but being honest, walking into a man's world, I might be the only woman, and I worked hard, and I didn't know what I was doing. I knew how my dad built houses. I knew how to bring someone to Heartland Homes, but I didn't know about this, like finding a piece of land in Lawrenceville or East Liberty or wherever it may be. And we're going to do what's called an infill house. That was new to me. Yeah. What paperwork do we even use? Like, how do I even put someone under contract? Like, that's not stuff you learn in real estate school. Right. That's not stuff you learn in your office usually. So that's where I really cut my teeth and spent years, to be honest, learning, figuring it out, asking a lot of questions. Now I feel pretty comfortable in that arena, but it was not an overnight thing at all.
No. Even the same as me. Like, I came from regular construction until like 6 years ago. And when we started our company, my partner was telling me all about it, like new construction. He's like, dude, it's going to be like, and he had experience of building with NVR. And when he worked for Heartland when it was Gillespie's and before it got bought out.
So we have yeah.
Right. So he worked for them, and then he worked for Frank Sakaitis and some other, custom builders, and did that for a long time. And he was telling me about like how it's just it all just domino effects. And I'm like, no way. I'm like, I'm used to like chaos of flips and, unorganization and working with old stuff. Cause I started my career a long time ago in Lawrenceville, Island Park, doing big remodels down there early on. And that was kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You were much earlier than me, but I was in like that 2014, 2013 era.
Yeah, that was early.
Yeah. I mean, you were selling them at like 400 then, now you're at 8-9 million. So it's definitely evolved, but I didn't know anything about new construction either. And then when I like seen the first house get framed and how fast it went, I was like, oh my God, this is so scalable. I'm like, if I could just figure this whole thing out, I'm like, this is going to be an unbelievably scalable thing. Not easy at all though.
No.
Because same thing, I had to learn, about learning about land and dirt work and permits and stormwater management plans and all this stuff.
And every area is totally different what they require.
Every area is totally different. And we do permits for all of our clients. We handle all the back end infrastructure, the front end infrastructure. It is a department in itself. Yeah. And the unique thing is we kind of connected also on a project in the city, which was fun. We got to work on together, which was a cool project. And I've been kind of following you ever since, your family is builders and you doing a lot of new construction. Yeah. And so you primarily do in the city?
I do a mix. So, I mean, with the family business, we're doing a lot that's up north. Right. And then I live in the city. My office is out of East Liberty. I sell up primarily in the north and then in the city, but I've been really blessed to work with like the community group in East Liberty. Yeah. I've worked with different builders that are, really made a name for themselves in the city doing multiple houses. And then I might get a smaller developer that's like, hey, I'm going to build one house or two houses. They're getting their feet wet. And that's been really fun too, because having been through multiple times on other houses at this point, doing this for a minute, I'm able to give them guidance on, hey, this floor plan's great, but what if we did this? Right. Because this is what a buyer might be asking
and that's
for.
Shovel in the ground.
Oh yeah. There were two houses we just closed on maybe in the last month. I have been meeting with the developer prior to breaking ground, like probably 4 years ago, if not longer. And that was just for two houses. And we've done multiple projects together, but there were meetings with the seller. We had the builder. We met with the architect. I mean, there was so much back and forth. And sometimes you'll get a lot of big personalities together. Like, I just want to be able to make sure it's going to sell for my client and make sure that we're looking at what is the sale price that the market can support at this time. Now, sometimes when you're doing builds in the city, for example, you'll have a developer that's building a house and it's going to be completed. The buyer will get just a regular mortgage and it closes when it's done versus maybe with some of your clients might get a construction loan. So if I'm meeting with someone, even if it's say like 2 years before it's going to be done, from 2 years to the end, that house, especially if it's in Lawrenceville, it's going to appreciate. So we may be hitting a certain price in our planning stage, but by the time it's going to be done, we might list it at a totally different number. But I would rather my clients be more conservative going in versus where I've seen people really fail is that they have somebody, I don't know who that somebody is, but someone in their ear like, oh, you can get this. But that they haven't studied the market. And that's when you've probably seen this too, like even maybe just being a builder for people where they get in underwater. They shot for the moon, but the market's here. So that's something to keep in mind.
I pivoted out of specs quickly.
Yeah.
That's how we started our careers. We're mostly South Hills builders. We'll do 3-4 a year in the north, little bit in like the moon areas and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know what's tougher. I mean, I think a lot of people, they go back and forth and like, oh, we'd rather just build specs, and not deal with the client. And I'm like, yeah, but there's another side to that. I'm like, because it's not exactly what they want. And then they're looking at it as a resale and they're like, well, can we like move that wall? I'm like, it's a brand new. I'm like, no, we can't do anything. No, we're not. But then, also like you said, though, when you have a client, big personalities, everything in the beginning, and you're doing now everything we do is pre-sold.
Yeah.
That's also a handful because
is.
You're going through, I mean, we've transitioned over a little bit, and anything over $1 million, the design phase takes forever because there's a lot of just
you gotta make sure it's just so.
It's very meticulous. It's little details. It's, a lot of changes back and forth. Organization needs to be on point. And I'll be honest, I mean, our primary market up until I would say end of last year was probably $650 to $850. Like I love that. I love that price point. Like,
and that's a really good price point in general. Like new construction or resales. I find that there is a hole in the market right now. Mm-hmm. I get so many calls all the time. Like, do you have anything that you can build me for 600? Yeah. And it's hard.
Oh, very. Yeah. Very. Yeah. We get that call and they're like 400. I'm like,
I got one for 190 this week.
Yeah. I got one for 275 last week. I was like, I'm sorry. That's just not possible. Yeah. But, we've had to pivot and shift our market and the way we do things inside of our office because, open and admittedly, we got a little exposed by the $1 million market. Like I got very comfortable in the 650 to 850s and I got very comfortable in how to attack that. Yeah. And I knew exactly how to get through the process. And when we started getting into houses that were 7,000 square feet and above, we're like, oh my God, this is just a whole other animal. I need to add a bunch of layers into this. And I mean, that's how you learn. You got to understand your faults. And unfortunately, I probably lost a couple clients because I wasn't ready for that price point. Not that the build wouldn't have been good. It was just the upfront back and forth and organization and keeping
growing into that.
Keeping track of changes and pricing and this and that. I mean, it becomes very, very overwhelming at some point when you're into like year one and you're like, oh my God. Oh my God, we made 10,000 changes. So, we've all had to implement a lot of things over the years in regards to my process. I'm sure your process. So is a lot of your stuff spec builds or you do pre-solds at all?
So it's a mixed bag. So with my family's business with Madia Homes, like we're known as custom builders. I always say my dad's one of the OGs. Yeah.
I think I would truly say that you guys are custom because because custom is a very loose word.
Yeah. When I say custom, like I'm not going to name names, but there's certain companies that say we're custom. They're not. They're not. Sure.
You're custom to that floor plan, not custom to something outside of that floor plan.
You want a castle? We're going to draw it. You know what I mean? Like it's like, I mean, facetious, but we we've done all kinds of crazy things for people that they're like, we need a special room for X, whatever that might be. So no, we're fully custom. You can pick all your finishes. Like we have had people that wanted super high-end cabinets that maybe, you know, we've only had one person ever use, but like you might go to some builders who are like, well, this is the line we can do. So we're fully custom. In the city, it's a little bit different. It's more of like what you kind of touched on. Like sometimes when you're doing it's a spec built custom, where sometimes some developers will allow if they come early enough to move walls. But what I'm starting to see more
That's a bad idea.
Is exactly that. They're like, we're not doing that again. You did it on one or two.
We tried to do that a little bit on the project that we were on, and it just was like, it kind of backfired a little bit.
But you probably agree, like if you have like a floor plan that makes sense and this is the floor plan and then they can customize the finishes, that's different than fully custom. Yes. But that's what I see more in the city happen. But in the suburbs, you're going to see a mix of that. And then also someone like a Madia Homes that can do fully ground up custom. And it's really special.
I also early on got my ass kicked because when I was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've only done 4 projects in the city, and that's might be my limit ever. But when I was getting ready to build spec homes, I looked at the market and I'm like, okay, I'm very familiar with the city builds. Yeah. I was, I've worked in, stuff on 44th, 45th, 47th, East End. I'm like, you look at the owner and it's just like TSB 12 LLC.
They always do have numbers.
Yeah, they all do. And I'm like, okay, no one cares. They're building $800,000 houses, $900,000. They're buying them like crazy. I went out to the suburbs and tried that and got murdered. Because what I found out when we built specs was everyone was like, well, who's the builder? I've never heard of them. Never heard of them in my life. Like, who's that guy? Like,
I've never thought about. That's fair.
Like, are they going to be around to like warranty my house? Like, what if something goes wrong? Like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Because in the suburbs, you have NVR, you have Miranda, you have Infinity, you have Dan Ryan, you have DR Horton, you have these mega companies. And then you're just like, you're this little guy in the South Hills who's like, I don't know if I want to buy off that. Like, I don't even know if these guys are going to be around for a while.
You know what though? But I think you cut your teeth. People know your company now.
In the beginning in the suburbs, they were like, we don't know this guy. Yeah. Like, you go to the city, no one really cares as much, right? They're just like, oh, the house is beautiful. It looks nice. I think
one of the things that's different in the city, and you do have buyers there that want to live in the city, but they don't want a 100-year-old house.
Correct.
So that's where that's filling that need. Yeah. It's someone maybe moving from the suburbs that's like, I want newer, So I think that's why it maybe works differently.
It was totally something that I never thought about. And after that whole thing, we focused on nothing but branding ever since. Because I'm like, okay, I need to like really let people understand.
That's
here.
Cool. That was a good lesson.
Yeah, because I dealt with a lot of city stuff early on. We did a lot of city renovations, and I'm like, it's not going to be that big of a deal.
So did you used to have numbers in your name?
Yeah, it was like it was like BBSP Holdings 12 or 1 or 2 or something like that.
Depending which one it was, it was number 9.
Whatever entity it was. And then they were like, we don't know him. Like, it really hurt us. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of this. We got to come up with a name here, which I'm not great at by any of those means. But so on your end for the city stuff, you've seen quite the boom.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it's kind of transitioned a little bit from different areas. So is there an area that you like more in the city? I know some people do like Southside Slopes. Some people like the Flats. Some people like East End. Some people like,
Like it as in being a realtor or like.
Just difficulty of like projects going. They're all different areas because city of Pittsburgh's tough. Yeah. Building in the city of Pittsburgh's tough.
Yes, it is. I would say, I sell a lot. Like I sell all over the city, but I love the East End. It's probably because I live there. My office is in East Liberty. So I'm just a huge fan of, like in sales, like we're in real estate, but we're in sales. Yeah. They always say the best salespeople believe in what they sell. And I love where I live. I love my city. So I get really excited.
Yeah, that's what you should.
So when people are coming in, oftentimes like, and sometimes they might have an agent that doesn't know the city that well. And I never try to like make someone feel like, like they don't know what they're doing. I just try to get everyone involved in the conversation and get like that person that's relocating and excited. I'm like telling them about what restaurants are nearby. A lot of times on my listings, one of my little tricks I'll share is, especially even on a renovation, So like say it's in like Highland Park, or East Liberty is a good example, because East Liberty is like really about 6 blocks. It's not that big. I think people think it's this big neighborhood.
And are you including Highland Park and East Liberty?
No,
East Liberty
like
itself?
straight up East Liberty. It's not that big. So people may not know where that is yet, but it's really coming into its own. So on some of my listings, what I've done is I'll put together walking times to all different places. I'll put Whole Foods. 6-minute walk, how many miles? Not drive. I put walking distance, because I get so many people relocating in for UPMC or wherever it may be. I want to make it as easy as possible to give them a frame of reference. Like, where am I? And like, why do I want to buy this house? And sometimes it helps the agents too, because I don't want them to ever feel bad that maybe they're from an area that if I went to where they're from, I don't know their area, but they're coming here. I just want them to feel like armed with info. And so, but yeah, I do love selling in the East End, but I do sell all over the city. But I would say for new construction, and you probably can speak to this too, the cost of construction is what it is. And in some areas, it might be more expensive to build than in other areas, maybe like the utilities or infrastructure, like the city versus the suburbs could be different. But the cost of lumber is what it is, or like roofing, et cetera. And so as those numbers keep going up, pandemic and now where we are, you have to be able to hit a certain number if a developer is going to be building something as a spec to sell it. So that's why it's really, really strategic. And what I see in real estate where people like have these houses that are sitting, it's because they didn't do the exercise up front. That's where having a really good team is so important. Like having a really good realtor from day one is like critical. Having a great architect that knows the area that you're going to be building in, that they can build to the zoning, and then, having just a good team, like having good finishes, having the whole package. And if you're thoughtful about it up front and put that money in up front to do the planning, those are the houses that I see have the most success when they sell, and they don't look like this hodgepodge of stuff. And we've all seen those houses. I've seen some that look like they were calling them circus houses and different like random, like the buyers were spaceship houses because the outsides just looked like they got this on sale and then threw this in. And I think buyers are savvy. There might be that one buyer moving here that just needs a place that'll buy it, but why not be thoughtful, come out the gate with a product that's like connects with a broader pool of people versus a very specific pool.
Yeah, because I think the thing about the city is they only think ultra modern.
Yeah.
So that's like the thing. So, it's interesting because Infinity started doing those ones in Mount Washington, and they're more of like, they don't do ultra modern.
Yeah.
And they're selling. I mean, but they have a great brand.
Yeah.
As far as, what they kind of do. I've always looked at it in the sense of we've done some, not any new construction on Mount Washington, but I always like Mount Washington in the sense.
It's pretty.
Again, I like the area. I like the walkability. I'm a live in the country guy. So I live in the middle of nowhere on the river, which is nice. So that's kind of how I like it. But no, you're extremely right. And I had this conversation a couple weeks ago about an opportunity in Fox Chapel. And I actually brought you up to be one of the agents that would sell those because because there is a very big difference in understanding the land, the layout, those types of things prior to getting started. If you don't have a good plan on the upfront, you are going to fail. And when you're talking about a $50 million project or $55 million project, you need to have all your ducks in a row for a community for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Especially layout, what we're going to do and uniqueness of, premium lots and model homes. And I mean, there's algorithms to it. Yep. You know that. And when you're in a community that buyers don't like to take two rights, they may want to be you might want to put the model home on a left because it shows a certain way. You get more traffic that way. So, tips and tricks of there's a lot of thinking and sales and marketing that go into communities. Some reason why they do certain things and they draw your attention certain ways for certain reasons. Yeah. And again, when you get an agent, even myself, I'm pretty good, but I haven't been down the city in years. So like the pockets are so different now. I don't even think I would be able to go in and like understand a market like immediately again.
Yeah. You have to do like a deep data dive. That's what I always do. Like when I'm even doing like a little resale, it's like sometimes street by street.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's super weird too. And I think that's where sometimes you'll see these houses that are sitting forever. It's because they price it off something that's not really the right comp. But to your point, like I am such a big fan, like whether it's Fox Chapel, whether it's the North Hills, like really just sitting down and looking at the floor plan before you put shovel to ground if you're doing a model. And, and sometimes, not always, but, sometimes I've been in meetings where people are like, there might be a little bit of ego for whatever reason.
Very much so.
And,
this is construction.
Yeah. And, who are you to say this? And not at me, but like maybe someone else said something. And like, I always say, this is not how I would do my house.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what I know buyers are looking for.
Right.
Cause like my house, like I have in Lawrenceville, I call it earthy modern. I love it. It's like dark and moody. Yeah. It's cool. I would not put those finishes into a model home, but when I go to sell my house someday, someone's gonna be like, that's a rad house.
Yeah.
But it's not the house you would maybe do for the model that you're trying to get the biggest pull. So like, that's how I try to explain it. You have to think about who your audience is, especially if you're doing a big community. That's where like an Infinity, they spent so much money studying like what are the trends. You walk in, it's like an Instagram room in every room. You know what I mean? And they really
every corner is filled with something, every nook and cranny, and
I still remember I toured one of their models, and it was actually really cool. But we went into the laundry room; they had it all decked out. There was like champagne glasses. I was like, everything was like so thought out. Like you're gonna drink and do some laundry.
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
They'll put like wine beverages in your laundry room, and I'm like, oh, I guess
I don't think I'm gonna have coffee, but hey,
whatever you're into. No, it's
it was beautiful.
They are for sure, and it's an interesting thing because they all came from the production world too. You know, they all came from Heartland whenever it split up and it got sold, and those guys all went their separate ways. And it's unique that you say that because my office manager started with NVR, and I mean they put you through like very stringent sales training.
That's what I've heard.
You need to know how to one-stop close. In Ryan, and that's the way they want it. And then the funny thing is like in my family come from builders as well. So a lot of mine are production and sales and into NVR, and they do mass quantity and we do not. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. I'm like, the amount of warranty you have to deal with, they're like, but you're crazy. You have to deal with all this. Like we just kind of, rinse and repeat. We know you just push a button and we know the sales price to everything. Like, no, I get it, but like I can't do that, and it's two different types of worlds, totally, and that's what we always say is there's a builder for everybody. Not every builder is the same. Not every builder's process is the same. I think also too, I think a lot of people don't get and understand that production building is not necessarily about building the house. It's more about the financing and the insurance on the front end because they're more of a financial business. So. I think there's a little like building a house is just a means to an end for them. Yeah. Whereas like when you're true custom, and we don't do the size houses that your family does.
That's a niche.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's interesting because we've completed a couple this year that were pretty big. And I'm like, I just don't love it. Like, I mean, I do. It was fun. They're great showpiece projects. But this is already a very complicated thing to begin with because, figure even early on, you have 6 months of design, you have find a lot, you get that going, then you have a 9-month build, then you have a year warranty. I mean, you're with these people on a normal size house for 2 years, 2.5 years, and we've built some great relationships over the years with people we've built. And I can maybe count on not even any people that we've ever had conflict with, in the sense, which has been great.
Yeah, that's really good.
But if you get into a situation where you're building a 20,000 square foot house with somebody who's extremely picky, you are going to have a rodeo.
I think so. And I think too, that's where, even before you go down that road,
100%.
You might evaluate whether it's worth the best fit.
Yeah.
Maybe a good way to put it.
100%.
Yeah.
So as the market has kind of shifted and it was crazy through COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, insane.
I was really tired.
I bet.
During COVID, I worked hard.
Did you have a record year? Was that like a record year for you doing there? Or?
I had a great year, but you know what? Like I worked my butt off, like I'm single. I live, by myself. Like you couldn't do anything. Yeah. And so if people wanted to go look at houses, I was like, okay, because there was nothing happening.
Yeah, right.
So I just worked,
Non-stop.
and and I was like, this isn't going to last forever. And I really wasn't trying to I was just doing more deals. Like, it wasn't like doing crazy deals. I was just doing like more deals because of, the interest rates. There was more buyers and sellers in the market. So yeah, it was a crazy time.
So how has it shifted for you now that interest rates have gone from 2.5 to fluctuating between 6.5 and 7?
Yeah. So, I would say last year wasn't the same as that year prior. That was really wild. I still had a great year though.
Yeah.
I would say this year I've been working hard. This first quarter has been fantastic. One thing I can say is it's not really about the rates per se. A lot of it's the relationships. And also, I think, one of the reasons you brought me on to talk about was, like working in new construction. I work with a lot of people that do new construction, but maybe are doing renovations. I have other clients that they own big portfolios, and maybe I met them 20 years after they acquired it, but now they're starting to sell off as individual houses.
That's an interesting thing, right?
Yeah. And, and I might work with them on like, okay, what do we need to do to make it look like what people want in a house? Like maybe we need to like update these cabinets or update this paint. And so there's a lot. I feel like I really do work hard for my sellers, especially, and spend a lot of time with them prepping their houses for sale. Like I have a client right now that I'm working with, and he would like, like you're gonna laugh when I say this, but it made me feel good. But he said to me, he's worked with other agents. He goes, "You really treat this like a business," and I was like, yeah. I have an employee that works for me that I have to pay. Yeah. I pay a lot of money for photos and video. Sure. Like I don't get just the cheap people. Yeah. I said, all of that comes out of my pocket. Yeah. I want this to be a good experience for the seller. I want it to be a good experience for the buyer. Like, yeah, that's why we're putting all this time. There's many conversations I have with sellers that I'm like, the house is not ready to list. And I don't want to spend the money on the pictures because I think if you spend 2 more weeks and here's just like caulking and like edging your yard.
I think a lot of people get really nervous to say that because they think they're going to lose the sale.
No, I speak up. And I feel, and if they're not cool with that, like I think we would know that early on if they're just like, just put it up, just put it up. I'm probably not the right agent. But the ones that are open to that, like I just did that for one of my clients and like it was a little painful probably for them like to get all this stuff buttoned up, but we sold it really quick. Yeah. He just referred me to someone else that renovates houses. This guy just called me today that's in town. And he's like, I heard I need to call you. He's like, I just went through that house. I heard you sold it and let's talk. It was like, so that's how a lot of that happens. But, I am working hard for those sellers and hopefully bringing them more value. And I've had them say, wow, you're doing a lot more than I'm used to. And it's a team. I always say it's a team effort.
100%.
Yeah.
So you have an employee. Do you have an admin? Is that what you have?
Yeah. She's a realtor. Yeah. But she does, I wanted a licensed person that's full-time so that they can go check on houses if I need to get a buyer in somewhere.
Yeah. We had a 1099 salesperson recently and we switched over. We switched over to our first full-time, which has been night and day. Total thing of like just being able to, have someone there that I can rely on who's in office every day. Yeah. It's kind of their main priority.
And like, to be honest, because I always like read all your social posts and like you always are talking about scaling up. And I think you had posted something, I don't remember what it said, but it was sometime about like sometimes you have to like bring the right people on. And I was scared to maybe make that step. And so I always like follow your business in your posts and it encouraged me to take that step.
Yeah, I was so... Man, I think the one thing that I did right, and I don't credit myself often for a lot of things because I learned the hard way on everything. Like I learned by falling flat on my face and losing crazy amounts of money. And that's the way I truly feel that like if you're able to withstand that storm, you'll be like, we were 4 seconds away from bankruptcy in COVID. Even that project we worked on, I lost probably $300,000. We got dominated. It was just a very hard thing. But during the early time, I knew that this business, and so do my partners, and we were all under the understanding that if we don't invest in people very quickly, we are going to never get anywhere. Because we're 3 guys that run 2 multi-7-figure businesses inside of one business. And we were pulled in 9,000 directions. Yeah. So if we didn't, and our first employee was not cheap. It was an office manager. That was before an administrator. And like we I didn't even have the money for it.
Yeah.
Now looking back, we're light years ahead. But I mean, I think, when people talk about fear and not wanting to put out money or employees, it's all the same fear. It's just the dollar sign gets bigger as you grow. And that's why I always tell people, like, my buddy tells me all the time, he was thinking about starting his own gig and he's like, I'm nervous. I'm like, bro, do you not think I'm nervous? I just bought $1 million building. I'm like, and I was like, I'm barely, like, I'm freaking out. I was like, cause always that next level really scares the shit out of you because you're just like, okay, the unknowns, right? So, I mean, you've built, and I focus on it too, and this is why I love what you do. You built an amazing brand and reputation in the city.
Yeah.
And I know I don't love working in the city, but a lot of my friends do. And you're always in the spotlight of like, okay, oh, she's got this over there. She's got that over there. Now my question is, there's a lot of renovation, a lot of flipping going on in the city of Pittsburgh. Now that you have a great brand and reputation, are you very careful who you attach yourself to?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say like my sphere that I work with a lot of the same people over and over.
Yeah.
And when I got my license many moons ago, one of my first managers, he was one of the owners at Remax Select where I'm at. He always would tell everybody this, but he said, you need to find what your niche is because when times are tough, whatever that means in the industry,
now, a lot of people would say
now your pipeline won't go dry. And I didn't know what he meant, to be honest. I really didn't. I was like, okay, but I kind of like, maybe I fell into construction a little bit more so than the average person just because of my family. But, something inside of me was like, go to the city. Like, I love the city.
Yeah. You fit in. Listen, you fit the. If I
wasn't here, I would be back on the beach in California, which is where I also
your
love.
heart's at. Yeah.
But if I'm in Pittsburgh, I love Lawrenceville. Those are my people. Like I love walking out and seeing one of my best friends is my next door neighbor. Like legit. So like for me, like I wanted to get down there and do this thing that I was passionate about.
If we ever did anything down there again, you would definitely be our choice of if we did anything like that. Just because, like I said, it's we in the South Hills is big developers are very different.
Yeah.
So it's a very cutthroat money game. It's, we've the same thing. We've always tried to break into the development world and try and get these meetings with them. And it's very tight knit. Like, Marty kind of deals with Infinity and Laurel and all those guys kind of have these like mixed together. So like the new guy getting in, it's very difficult because it's all very insulated. And we've had almost gotten scenarios with some developers where like, you don't know what's going on in the background.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, you think these guys like had it all together, and then you realize they don't. You're like, oh my god, I got to protect myself. Oh my god, I'm like, we're gonna ruin everything over this opportunity. So yeah, I mean, that's what we really do now is we're very selective on who we attach ourselves with now. Just because when you have a brand and it actually means something and that's what your business is worth. So now I do everything in the world to protect it.
Yeah.
People are like, why don't you give out hats to everybody and shirts? I'm like, because I don't know you. Like, what if you're like, getting into a bar fight or like, what if you're like, you never know. Like, I'm like, that stuff, like, it worries me in the sense of like, you don't understand how hard we've had to work to even get into this space, let alone like, let it be, watching who you attach yourself to is a very, because there's some shoddy construction.
Yeah.
And the last thing you'd want to do as an agent like yourself is get attached as you're the seller on a renovation on a big one that really isn't to the par that it should be. And then you're going to have problems down the road and further down after that. And that could roll into a lawsuit. And it's just, those are, I think a lot of people in real estate, especially, outside looking in at realtors, think it's super easy. And they're just like, oh, you just get this check. And it's just like, I'm like, there's nothing like that.
I think one of the things that's like a misconception too, because I've been fortunate, like with some of the networking groups I'm in, I've had like younger women come up to me. They're like, I want to do what you do. And I'm happy to talk to anyone. But I think there's a time commitment on each one of these deals that people don't know like what they're signing up for. Yeah. And that's the part where, sometimes it would be a lot easier, to be honest, just to be like listing or selling like completely ready to go houses versus like people picking all their finishes and doing all this. It's a marriage.
Very.
It is.
Yeah.
And you may start on something. I just got like a couple deals that closed. I had under contract for, like not a year and a half, 14 months, And so like you have to be able to plan ahead that like I didn't get paid until they were done, but I might've done work for a year on them.
And there's a million things that could happen in the middle to implode that.
Yeah. So yes, that's something I think people don't realize. But again, that's where that niche that comes in is helpful, because then you have more that you just kind of keeps hearing it out.
It's interesting because you're open to more avenues than most.
Yeah.
You have the connection to your family, which does the full custom side, which is awesome.
Yeah.
You understand a buyer if they want to go to a production world.
Yeah.
You understand a buyer if you want to bring them to a semi-custom builder like myself.
Yep.
And you can do the renovation side. You understand the city. You understand the different communities and the townships. So that, I think that's the exciting part about even the, like you said, when the girls are like, oh, yeah, I love what you do, because new construction is exciting.
It is fun.
It's a lot more exciting than resale, but it's also very hard.
Yeah.
And that was the thing I really wanted to decipher is resale new construction or spec or pre-sale new construction is not like selling something, that's already there or pre-existing. It's very different.
It's very different. And like, there was like a joke for a hot minute with a couple of the developers. Like they always were like, what do they call me? The pre-sale queen.
That's what I always said it was. I was like, she's like the queen of new construction down there. I'm like, I give it to her. Like, she's incredible.
Thank you. But it was funny because back in the day, we didn't have like spec houses in the city. The suburbs was different. But in the city, like we would literally have a piece of dirt and a rendering.
Right. And you're talking a lot that's 20 by 100.
If you're lucky.
Right. That's what I mean.
It might even be like 19.
Yeah.
But you had to like cast a vision. Like I always felt like I was like a performer. I was like
smushed in between two other houses. And I swear we're not going to damage any of these. It's going to go great.
No, but I would like walk through and I'm like, and this is where your kitchen is. And I'm like, I'm the refrigerator. And now I'm the stove. Like I would literally act it out. I mean, I'm wearing boots. Like I'm always in boots. Like you're not going to see me in high heels because I don't know where I'm going to end up. I might be in a hoarder's house that someone's going to buy and they're going to gut it. And then I might end up in a penthouse later that day. And I just showed a $20,000 house, but I'm going to put something under contract for 1.2. Like it's all good.
Yeah, they're all the same.
No ego. Like whatever.
They're all the same. I totally get it. So I got to get your thoughts. I mean, you're a very active agent. So now with that new lawsuit that kind of got passed, have you looked into that at all?
With NAR, you're talking about.
So what are your thoughts? How do you think it's going to change? Because real estate, like you said, it's very old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably one of the industries that hasn't changed in a bajillion years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look back, I remember when I would take our code of ethics and all that, they talked about back in the 1800s, like what has the oldest, real estate does, But, I don't have the answer yet. I think in the next 2 weeks, we're going to see how it plays out. But, I don't really worry about stuff like that. I'm just being honest with you. Like I trust God, like everything's going to be good. However, I think, on the selling side, and I was like sharing some of this stuff with you. Like I have a lot of clients, they're like, you bring a lot to the table. And I actually had one say to me, and I don't charge like a bigger commission than other people, but he's like, I'm guessing he worked with discount agents before, but I had someone today say to me, he's like, I'm realizing that sometimes if you pay more for the agent and they really know what they're doing, it pays off. Like we probably made a couple % more by using you on the sale than we would have because we got the house ready and put finishes in that people like. That he's like, oh my gosh, that made sense. And so like I feel like
sitting on it and paying
interest and, and so in that regard, I'm not worried. I think, time was going to tell how it's going to play out on the buyer side. And we're going to have a big office meeting this week. I'm sure my managers are going to fill us in, but I do think that things are going to change. May is when, our license renewal is. I still have to take some of my classes.
I do too.
We always do. Yeah. But I think prior to the lawsuit with NAR, that we were going to see maybe not as many people renew their license this go round.
I think a lot of people got really into it during COVID and then realized it isn't what they thought it was going to be because it shifted really quickly, really fast.
I feel bad if someone got their license during the pandemic, they learned probably bad habits. No. Where if you were in the business for some time and you had a good foundation, like I got my license, I'm trying to remember, I think it was in 2006. It was right before it was right when everyone was doing the stated income mortgages. You didn't have to show anything. Yep. I got my license right when they put a stop to that. There was like that big scandal, which is good. And then,
it caused a financial crisis.
Everything bottomed out. So I remember the owner of the company, he said to me, he's like, you're going to have to learn to work. I go, what do you mean? I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, brand new agent. He's like, well, it's been real easy for a lot of people. He's like, you're going to have to learn to work. And I was like, okay. And so I had to learn to work. I was like, when people were going in foreclosure outside of Pittsburgh, they say we didn't go to the party, so our bubble didn't burst. Like I had to work really hard. Yeah. And so I think that cut my teeth with good, like old school practice, that when the pandemic came, I was like, this is not going to last. No. But if you learned that during the pandemic and learned bad habits, I think those are the people that are maybe going to bounce, which that's fine. Mm-hmm. But with NAR, I don't know. You might have more insight than me.
No, I was interested. I'm the same thing. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's already kind of, everything's kind of, I heard somebody say the other day, like everyone's okay with splitting transfer tax. Like that makes sense to me. I mean, I don't know. It's going to make it tough for first time home buyers for sure.
That's where I think people are going to really feel it. Like if sellers maybe aren't paying a commission, and a lot of times, like I look at it, it's like baked into the price already.
100%.
It's going to affect maybe the transfer prices on houses. Who knows how it's going to all roll out. But you're right. I do think the first time home buyer that already is like struggling for their like 3% down, that's where we'll see how it shakes out. I don't know the answer.
I don't either. I just wanted to get your it's kind of a new topic and everyone's kind of got a lot of different interpretation about it or their opinion about it. And I'm just like, let's just, see what your thoughts are on it. Well, and again, it's all super new to all of us.
Yeah. And commissions are always negotiable.
That's what I said. I'm like, I don't think anyone really knows that.
I always tell my clients that when we sit down with listing docs, always negotiable. It says that right there. So
doesn't mean I'm going to accept, doesn't mean you're going to accept.
Yeah, it's negotiable.
And that's what a lot of the stuff that I only do friends and family. I mean, I'm really only friends and family. And you're right, because when I got into it, I'm like, got a couple listings and whatnot. My first quarter was actually really good. I think I had like almost 5 million. And I'm like, I don't do nothing.
That's awesome.
Like that.
You're killing it.
Yeah, but I don't do anywhere near the volume of that usually. But I tell people, I'm like, it's not my love. Like I love construction. That's always been my thing. But it's fun. It's good, fun to go out and do something different.
It made sense for you to get your license.
It did. So like, we bought our building. It was on the market. It saved me, I was able to roll my commission check and to cover a lot of our closing costs on our building, which was great.
Yeah.
So it's opened up a lot of doors in that regard. If I want to go see something, I don't have to wait or do anything like that. I would never list my own properties though. Like I'm not a believer in that. Like because again, I'm sure when you work with investors or flippers or developers, we all have holding costs.
Yeah.
So that becomes an emotional game.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you gotta get this on. Oh, we gotta get this on. Because I don't want to make the next interest payment or whatever it is. I'm like, so that's why I'm like, okay, I need somebody else in there just to like outside perspective on that. To where we can, level headed and get through this to where it all kind of makes sense. So what big projects do you have currently that you're working on?
So my dad and brother have some really cool houses that they're doing up in like the Hampton area. So
which is kind of a world of its own up there. I mean, there's no real competition. I mean,
because there's not a lot of land.
Yeah.
So their one community has like a few sites left, and we have some spec homes that we're building. And then
and you're the agent on those?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then my brother helps me too. He has his license. He's a broker. So it's under me, but we both work with them. And then I'm involved with a lot of stuff in the city. We just closed out a bunch of places, but like Aura in Lawrenceville, I'm on the site team there. Nice. So we just sold out phase 1 so that we had 9 houses. Good. And I mean, they're beautiful homes, like really classy. Like they have brick. Yep. And that's where I think you were touching on that earlier. Like they look classic. They look modern, but classic. Right. And then we'll be releasing phase 2 soon, which that'll be exciting. There'll be 11 more. Nice. So that's going to be really fun. And that's like 4 minutes from my house, 5 minutes. So that's like, it's really fun to do that. And then I have a few like infill properties I'm working on with people. So those will be coming to market. So I mean, there's some in some other neighborhoods too, but they're not like live yet. So I'm not like technically able to talk about them, but so there's always like something in the wheelhouse.
Have you been seeing any trends kind of shift so it's funny when people talk bubble markets, just like you said, Pittsburgh really wasn't that affected by 2008, 2009 as much because we're more like slow and steady.
We didn't like, from what I remember, we didn't like back then we would appreciate like 3% a year. That was like what you would tell your clients. You had this like chart you showed them. But we just didn't go 3%. We just went flat. Is from what I recall from back then, but we didn't really dip.
Yeah. So I read a lot about it going into COVID because I'm like, okay, we might come out of the backside of this into a financial crisis. What was the last one like? You know, so I wanted to make sure that I was armed and ready to understand any things that may come from what happened. So in regards to that, are you seeing any trends shifting in neighborhoods in the cities that are getting, you know, a little bit things blowing up in areas that you weren't sure were going to happen? I know you talked about East Liberty.
So what I can say is, and we're running out of land. So it may not just be land, but just be houses in general. It could be someone's home. It could be a renovation. It could be new construction. East Liberty is definitely growing. Like you have Duolingo, which is like one of my favorite. I have a lot of clients there. My office is right there. Whole Foods opened up. And so all of that's in walking distance, and it's a really easy commute to Children's Hospital and some of the other hospitals. So people are coming over to East Liberty, and we're seeing some really good houses come to market. So I'd say that's an area that's maybe more activity than before. I even am seeing like Highland Park get more popular. It's always been a great neighborhood, but I'm seeing more people like want to move to Highland Park.
Yeah, the architecture is amazing. Yeah, the homes are huge.
You get the space.
Yeah, you get some space.
You know, Lawrenceville, where I live, it's always booming. But there's stuff that sits there too. Because I think that's where you touched on like people that maybe have the numbers in their names or whatever. You know, I'm just being facetious. But, you know, that maybe they came in and don't know the market if they're from another area and maybe they didn't put the right finishes in. I am finding buyers, and I think a lot of this is social media, and I have nothing to prove any of this, but it's an opinion that younger buyers potentially too, they want a certain type of house and they do not, and I know we always joke about like, don't make everything gray, you know, like, but they really want thoughtfully done houses. They want a better quality floor. They want nicer cabinets and like, you know, some cool features in the house. Like maybe you added a skylight or did something unexpected or put this extra upper deck on that never was there before. Those are the things that sometimes can like get someone more excited, but still, you know, having parking always adds value. That in the city would be like
always
a big deal. Like great closets and parking will help your house be higher on someone's list.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing that you can put in, you always laughed about that in renovations or said, if you can fit a $10,000 parking pad, you just made $50,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the reality because if you can get off the street and onto a pad, I mean, it is night and day down there in regards to, you know, a lot of that stuff. And it's difficult. I mean, construction's tough down there. I mean, it is, we were lucky on the one that we did in Northside because we had some open space to move around. But I mean, when you're talking in Lawrenceville, I mean, there's some days they'll drop a bunk of lumber and when they run through that lumber, they're done that day because there's nowhere else to put it. Yeah. So now you got to come back another day and another day.
It's funny you say that. When I built my house, I'm on a corner and I used a lot of my dad's guys. I had to bring in like my own GC and stuff though too. But he always was like, make sure you buy in a corner. Because I don't think he thought I would find something.
Yeah, no, he was like, we had a corner too.
He's like, we have to put a dumpster somewhere. And I don't think anyone was super excited about this idea except for me about building. But this was like back in the day on the multi-list where you had to put the dimensions of the lots. Now it's acreage. It's like 0.01, blah, blah, blah. All I would do at night is I would go on the multi-list and look at every single new listing in Lawrenceville. And all I did was I didn't care if it was under, I think, $65,000 in price. Yep. And I looked at the property sizes until I found one that had a big, and then I would look and see what street it was on and where it was at. That's how I found my property is I just every night looked at the dimensions. I actually got, it's almost a double lot. And I got like a really good price because this was forever ago.
Sure.
But it was a corner too. And that was the one I put my bid on because I thought you had to have a corner. I think it was a preference. Now I'm realizing. But back then, it really did make it easier.
It's much easier. 100%.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, there's not the same, a lot of people calling to us and they're like, what's your price per square foot? And I'm like, that's like a
It's subjective.
It's a very subjective number because I'm like, what are your exterior finishes? What are your interior finishes? What are your sizes? Like, what do you think? Like roof pitches. There's a million things that go into this.
We get that a lot with my dad's company too. And like sometimes we're getting compared to like more of like a production builder.
For sure. Because if you say 400 a square foot, they're like, whoa.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, they're completely different
100%.
properties. Like for, Madia Homes, our buyer pool is like, vast, but a lot of the buyers that go around and interview different places that come back to us, it's usually because of the quality. Not saying the other ones don't have quality, but it's the like custom nature of the quality is why they pick that. And it might be a little bit higher as a result, but they're getting something that's completely hand built or whatever it may be.
It's the same kind of thing that we get into because when I first started, I was the last builder that everybody would talk to. Aww. So then I was like, I like took it to heart. Like you said, it just hurts my feelings. But then I'm like, wait a minute, let's reverse engineer this and think about how we can win. I'm like, all right. So I listened about this company, this company, this company, this company, this company, this company. So I probably only have 6 competitors inside of my world in my price point.
Yeah.
So I just do everything that they don't do.
Yeah.
So what I did is I tailored my package to everything that everybody didn't like from everybody. And I just do all that. So
that's cool.
So what I do is I started just catching some stuff falling out the back because, again, there's some loose word custom. People be like, oh, well, they won't let us move this wall. They won't let us go outside these floor plans. I'm like, I'll draw you. Like I said, my partner always says, we'll build you a house upside down if you really want one, and again, it's like you said, we'll draw you a castle, and I think a lot of people, and a lot of our customers have always kind of said the same thing. It's like, you guys all seem to talk because your prices are all around the same, but you don't all offer the same.
That's true.
And it's kind of a funny thing of, we may be a little bit higher too, but they know what they're getting, more of a quality product, more of a hands-on experience, more of.
You might be more accessible.
Yeah, that too. I mean, because I think now what we really try to tailor our stuff to is the experience.
Yep.
Like the house needs to be great. It always needs to be great. So now it's okay from the first phone call to the final close when you get the keys, and even through warranty, which is just as important, if not more important.
Yeah.
How do you be as best as humanly possible?
I love that. That's what's important.
And that's what
because everyone has a good experience.
For sure. And this is what I told everyone, because if you look at our reviews, and we almost have more reviews than every construction guy that's been out than anybody, because we focus so hard on it. As you look at all the reviews, there'll be one sentence that says, the quality was excellent, but such and such and such and such did this. And this was amazing because such and such called me. They were available at 10 o'clock, or, their builder portals were amazing, or,
that's
like,
cool.
That's an experience, So that's what you're going to tell people about. It's, the house is going to be what it is. It's going to be a showpiece. It's going to look great and everything's going to be, function well. But that's a quick subject. But when you're talking over Thanksgiving, like, but they were just so great to get along with. They were fun to be around. It was, that's what I've always tried to say with our company is listen, I don't want to be corporate. I don't want to be sales pitchy. I don't want to be NVR. I don't need I've been in sales training my entire life.
Oh, wow.
I don't need to like run sales training in here. Like, let's just be us.
Yeah.
And if these people want to organically work with us,
that's why I liked working with you, because I brought my friends or clients, to interview with you guys. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you were like willing to hold their hand through the process, which not everyone's like
because
that.
Not everybody knows new construction like me and you.
Yeah.
And again, we've spent many years educating ourselves and being familiar in that standpoint and not understanding things and asking questions. And it doesn't just come. Like we've all had to put in the work.
Oh yeah.
And that was my interesting question. Like what I asked you earlier is like, what was your, and you actually do a little more resale than I thought you did new construction, which is great to hear.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting aspect with agents because I think a lot of them get very spooked by new construction too. Cause they're just like, well, it's just dirt.
Yeah.
Or you'll get the agents that are just like, okay, here's my client. Send me my check. And I'm like, okay, that's fine too. I'm okay with that, and because that's more of the production model. They don't want you involved. They want you to like
booger it up.
Yeah, for sure. And you might get in the way of their process and what they do. And
there was a builder that I just took a client to. It was a production builder, and they have like a referral that you have to sign to register, blah, blah, blah. And it basically, they had me sign something that just said, it was something along the lines of like, basically you're not going to do anything until the very end and then you'll help schedule the closing. It was like, they basically were like, we will take it from here. And I was like, okay. That doesn't mean I'm not going to ask questions,
for sure.
But it was just, they were trying to make it really clear. Like, don't worry, you're not doing anything. But to answer your question or maybe your comment, I do think this would be a scary area to just jump into if you haven't done it before. It would probably be easier to represent a buyer than a seller to start, just because there'd be so much to learn.
It's like drinking through, like even our sales guy we brought on, who was in the kitchen and bath world.
Yeah.
But he's just been shadowing me, and he's like, dude, this is like drinking through a fire hose. He's like, oh my God, my head's going to explode. He's like, I don't even know how you guys keep track of all this. And I 100% understand and agree with that. When you start doing it on scale and you start, managing 30, 40 clients at a time with 15 plus builds, and, we have 15, 10 or 12 remodeling projects and all the other stuff we have going on, you're just like, you're pulled in a million different directions. And it's the same as what you have going on when you're kind of, transferring your skills from one set to another. Because every, like you said, and every aspect of it is different, but needs to be treated the same.
Correct.
With the same energy and effort, which makes it tough because it's consistency.
Yeah.
And that was the unique part. And that was the fun part about, when you brought your other people, and the same thing of like, listen, everybody needs walk through this process.
And you guys were really gracious through that process with my clients that were like picking all their finishes, and they had a vision of what they wanted, but fortunately your styles were very aligned. So it made it really easy.
Well. Which was cool.
A little modern farmhouse action.
It worked out well. That's what we specialize in. It's great. We get a lot of that suburban stuff. It's in the city. It worked out well for us. So where can everybody find your stuff? So I know you were talking about wanting to get a little more involved in social media, maybe need some help in those areas, but you're still active on everything.
Yeah, no,
so how do people find you?
I'm on Instagram, Sarah Madia, PGH. I'm also on Facebook, and sarahmadia.com is my website that has all my listings and just has some fun info. I have a very 80s color palette right now of mint green and coral.
Fits you very well. I would expect nothing less. That's how I envision it. I love it. It is.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.